Time now for the nationally syndicated radio show, The World of Laurie Zoock. And now, here she is, the smart, the sexy, the savvy, divine Miss C.
And welcome to my show, The World of Laurie Zoock. If you've listened to the show before, then you'll remember that I'm an animal advocate. And I try to do things that help animals. I'm a rescue person myself. But sometimes I see stories that just kind of freak me out. And a couple of months ago, there was a story about Cecil the lion, who was basically a famous lion in Africa, in Zimbabwe, in a park. And a Minnesota dentist named Dr. Walter Palmer apparently hired two guides. They all claimed that they didn't know what they were doing, basically. And this fella kind of slaughtered Cecil the lion with a bow and arrow. And supposedly the lion took about 40 hours to die, and it made basically a global uprising. So the story was all over Facebook, and I contacted the administrators for the Cecil the Lion Facebook page. So I want to I have with me now Mark Robinson. So welcome to the show, Mark, and thank you very much for doing this today.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
I want you to kind of go into the details a little bit more about the story about Cecil the Lion, how it went viral on Facebook, and maybe, let's start at the very beginning.
I think from the very beginning there's always been a large global movement for animal advocacy, and Cecil's killing just sort of became the focal point. And so what we have seen is a worldwide group of people who are just fed up with a lot of issues, and mostly just a class of people that don't care about the future and don't care about animals, the land, climate change, whatever. It's a pretty big issue. However, Cecil really focused everyone and got their attention and brought everyone together.
All right. Now, one of the things that concerned me was I read a little bit about he had lion cubs. So what happens to the cubs when the father lion is killed in that pack?
Well, typically what happens in any case where the lead of the pride is killed is that other male lions who come into the pride to take it over typically kill the cubs because they don't want the competition. They want to cut out that genetic stream and start their own. So his cubs are clearly at risk. To date, we know the two of them are gone. We don't know the circumstances under which they were taken. One was taken before his death. One was taken afterwards. So our understanding is that there are still 6 cubs from the pride remaining in Wangee National Park.
Okay, now is it because he's in a national park that they just basically let nature take its course? No one takes those cubs in and rescues them, so to speak?
Yeah, the decision that was made was notwithstanding the fact that man stepped in and interfered with the pride to let the pride go the way of nature, and thus far, as we said, to our knowledge, as of last week, there are still 6 cubs.
All right. Now, I know obviously we contacted each other through Facebook, but you set up that Cecil the Lion Facebook page. So talk a little bit about that page, and also you have a website, right? CecilTheLion.org?
That's correct. Well, what's interesting is that last August, my wife Pamela and I were in Zimbabwe. We had a chance to get out to Wangee National Park for some drives with some of the guides there, and we'd heard about Cecil before we ever got out to meet him, and had the privilege of spending 2 afternoons photographing and filming he and the pride, mostly with the women, the girls running around having a good time. And so it was pretty astonishing to see an animal this size and this gorgeous. He was different than any other lion that we had seen. He was black-maned. He was massive. You just couldn't believe the size of him. And so it was clear after spending 2.5 weeks on safaris and game drives, this was a very unique lion. He left a very lasting impression on us, and when we came back, among numerous highlights of a trip to Africa, he was always at the top of the list. My wife Pamela happened to take a video that day of Cecil walking towards his mate, his pal Jericho, who was roaring, and it was perfect. He stopped literally right in front of the vehicle as if he were posing. So we got some pretty iconic video and some pretty incredible pictures. And when we were told that he'd been killed and how he'd been killed, which was, baited illegally out of the park, shot with a bow and arrow, blinded by a light from a truck, and then left to suffer for 40 hours before he was finally killed, and then skinned and beheaded. we just felt like we needed to do something that it was really unacceptable.
Right. Now, you also have a blog about Cecil, correct?
We started the Facebook page kind of by accident on a Sunday night and put up 2 pictures that I took and the video that Pamela took, and the next morning had 550 likes. So it was pretty astonishing to us how much this was resonating. And in the subsequent to that, Pamela's video has been used by virtually every news organization on the planet. I think it's up to 900,000 views on YouTube right now. And so we realized that something was happening. We weren't sure what it was or what it would be. We just felt that we had been pulled in by Cecil and should be doing something. And so Pamela and her sister and her business partner set up a website, cecilthelion.org. We set up the Facebook community, which is Cecil the Lion. It's got over 32,000 followers now. And within about 2.5 weeks, raised almost $10,000 in donations for Wild Crew, who's the group that was tracking and found Cecil and his collar, found that he'd been killed. So it was pretty astonishing to us to see, sitting on our laptops at our dining room table after work,
right.
The globe was showing up in our laptops going, hey, we want action. We want something done here.
Right. Well, I think people were outraged. And I know I was when I saw you go through my news feed. I knew I had to send you a message, and I'm sure you probably, or Pamela probably wasn't that surprised. But how many messages do you get a day? And I'm sure it was probably worse in the beginning, right?
It's calmed down a bit. I think when the trial of the guide starts on the 28th, the news media will be all over that, so it'll pick up again. I don't know how many we get a day, but my guess is we're probably responding to something in the order of 30 messages a day and get somewhere in the neighborhood of thousands of comments. We're trying to put up 3 news-oriented and action-oriented posts every day. The community that's involved in this Facebook page are really hardcore advocates in trying to force change. And so when there's a petition to go after UPS to get them to stop carrying trophy kills, or when the airlines were starting to announce that they were reconsidering their policies, we had thousands and thousands of people out doing whatever they needed to do to get done. They're now contacting all of their elected officials to make sure that the Cecil Act gets passed, which is going in front of Congress to try and limit trophy kill imports. So it's a group of people who, as I said earlier, have been involved in this for a long time. It's just Cecil became the sacrificial lamb and the tipping point. He became the okay, enough is enough.
Right. Now, what are the updates right now as far as Dr. Walter Palmer, I guess, went back to work?
Yes, that's what we understand.
Okay, and then what happened now with the guides? I think I read that one of them was arrested for illegally doing something with antelopes.
Yeah, he was attempting to illegally import them into South Africa and was caught. What's interesting is, and just a little bit of the Zimbabwe history that we were given when we were there, which has now been supplemented by a lot more information from our contacts there. The park is surrounded by very wealthy private landowners who basically were given these farms when the government redistributed property. The Mugabe government took the farms away from the original owners and handed them out. They handed them out to a lot of government officials and a lot of other wealthy people. Well, it's very easy for them to decide that they'd like to take $55,000 from a hunter to come in and hunt on their property. And it's been going on forever, and it's probably not going on right now because of the international floodlight that's on it. But it's not hard to get a guide and a landowner to agree to let you kill on their land. Dr. Palmer just happened to pick the wrong lion to kill. This was a very iconic tourist attraction. That they knew who it was. There was no other black-maned lion in that territory. It was clear that the guide knew who he was. And so now he has a trial coming up on the 28th for failing to interfere with an illegal hunt, which is sort of ironic because he was, in our understanding, leading the illegal hunt.
That's what it sounds like. And I know Dr. Palmer and obviously this guide both have been in trouble with the law before, and with this guide now doing something again. You would think that people would learn their lesson the first time, no? Jeff shaking his head over here. No, they don't learn.
Well, look, take this the right way. In Dr. Palmer's defense, he's done it multiple times there. So why wouldn't you think you could go back and do it again?
Right.
There's no evidence that his prior hunts in Zimbabwe were legal hunts. It was just that's how things are done there. It's an unfortunate fact of life But the corruption that goes on in Zimbabwe is such that they do not get the influx of tourists outside Victoria Falls that a Botswana who's banned hunting and Kenya who's banned hunting get, because the government there is corrupt. They've been on the U.S. watch list. And so hunting and trophy hunting is a big part of the economy in this area. And so the goal of the Cecil the Lion Facebook community website and hundreds of other places that you can go is to find a way to supplant that hunting income with tourist income. And that's going to take time. But it is something that we're willing to invest the time and stay in the game until it happens, because it happened in Botswana, it happened in Kenya, it happened in Costa Rica, where these governments finally realized that the money that they can make from photo tourism far exceeded what they could get from trophy hunting. And in addition to that, it's the guides and the landowners that are getting the money. It's not as if the villagers are benefiting from some rich guy letting somebody poach on their land.
Right, the rich people are making the money. And I know I scanned through something on Facebook today about, I don't know if it was a senator or a congressman, somebody wrote a letter to the government of Zimbabwe saying, hey, why don't you guys stop it? Because you're going to, it's going to be negative publicity for you if you allow it to continue, because people are just not going to go there anymore. They're not going to go and be tourists.
Well, I think that is sort of the antithesis of what we would be saying. We're looking to try to, I would categorize us as the pro-site, the pro-Facebook community. Okay. Everything that we're doing is positive. We are trying to create a positive change in Zimbabwe. We don't want to threaten that we're not going to come there, because they're not people who are going to listen to that. They don't care.
Right.
They look at their animals as commodities, and if they end up killing all of them, they'll come hunt something else. We're trying to impact change in an extraordinarily powerful, positive way. We were able to help convince the airlines that as their primary customers, hunters are minority in their customers, we were not willing to fly airlines that carried dead animals anymore. And as you saw, there was an enormous change. 40 airlines announced that they weren't going to do it. We continue to press UPS not to carry them, and the shark finning community finally won their battle. So we see that victory and say we need to keep making positive change.
Right, and that's good. And we're going to talk more about positive change in just a moment. We're going to go to a quick commercial break, and stay with us.
In the jungle, the mighty jungle, the lion sleeps tonight. In the jungle, the quiet jungle, the lion sleeps tonight.
Do you suffer from back, neck, or body pain? Do you suffer from migraines or have jaw or face pain? Has conventional medicine failed you? Were you injured or in an accident? Call chiropractic physician Dr. Dan Maddock at 813-935-1664. Dr. Dan has helped thousands of patients gain relief for more than 30 years. Dr. Dan is caring, gentle, and takes his time with each patient. He's also a past president of the International Craniopathic Society, a special certification of only 300 chiropractors worldwide. Dr. Dan helps patients from the neck up and the neck down. Dr. Dan accepts most insurance plans. Don't continue to live in pain. Call 813-935-1664 today. That's 813-935-1664 and get on track to better health.
Are you looking for an affordable way to advertise to thousands of consumers nationally? If you own a business and didn't think you could afford radio advertising, you need to call me, Laurie Zoock, host of the nationally syndicated radio show, The World of Laurie Zoock. My show reaches thousands of people on 29 AM and FM stations nationwide, as well as through the internet. Additionally, your commercials will also be heard on all of my podcasts and throughout social media sites. Don't wait another minute. Call me at 813-777-4908. 813-777-4908, and let me bring your message to the nation and to help you gain more exposure. And welcome back to the World of Laurie Zoock. I've been speaking with Mark Robinson, and he is the creator and administrator of the Cecil the Lion Facebook page. And now we're in the studio, and Jeff Collins is here with me. And Mark, he's going to ask you a question.
Hi, Mark. It's good to talk to you. We've talked a lot about Cecil. We've talked a lot about the hunter. And one thing we haven't brought up is the villagers or the people that are permitting this to happen either on the lands or even in their area. Is there a way to educate them so that they can warn whoever needs to be warned that these people are on the property or nearby and they're doing these hunts? Maybe you call it a tattletale, but it's to protect the animals that keep them alive by tourists coming to see them.
There's kind of a catch-22 in some sense. This is saying TIA, this is Africa. So everything there has sort of its own way of, its own pulse. The villagers are not all lion fans because the villagers lose livestock to them on occasion because there's not proper management in Zimbabwe like there is in Botswana and some of the other places. The other issue is it isn't so much that the villagers are tattling or not. It's that somehow when you look at the fact that you have all of these large, they're basically farms. They were actual farmland producing things that they're no longer producing because they were given to people that don't know how to run farms. The villages aren't involved when a wealthy landowner allows a guide to come in and say, I can make you $30,000 if you'd let us hunt on your land. It's simply an arrangement that goes on between the guide and the landowner. In villages where we visited in Botswana, the villages are all involved in the tourist trade, and so they're working at the camps. They're working on private concessions. They benefit from the tourist dollars that come in. It's built. The economy there has been built for tourism. In Zimbabwe, the economy is very focused on the wealthy who don't care about the animals. In Botswana, the villagers do care about the animals because, as you put it, it ties into their livelihood. As long as the animals are thriving, people are going to come to photograph them. We had 7 people in the vehicle photographing Cecil at the same time. Well, when you look at the amount of money that brings into a community, 7 travelers who spend somewhere in the neighborhood of $20,000 each to go on these photo safaris, it's far more significant income than one idiot finds a corrupt guide and a corrupt landowner and takes out a huge tourist attraction. There's no way to replace Cecil economically.
Right now, are the national parks? It's not contained, I'm assuming. So how does Cecil or any of the other lions, how do they stay within the confines of the national park?
Well, the truth is the national parks are set up to allow them purposely to migrate in and out. The national parks do, however, preserve water supplies for them. One of the groups that we're working with now, the Friends of Wangé Trust, that's what they're pretty much their sole objective is to keep water in the parks, because during the dry season, which is August, September, the animals all congregate around the watering hole, so they make sure that there's water in the park. Well, the animals learn that during the dry season they know where to go to find water. These landowners are not necessarily putting money into maintaining wells, and they're called pans. Pond is a pan there.
Okay.
Where in the park they maintain this water supply, so the animals know to stay there. They're free to migrate in and out. There's no fence, but they've learned there will be water during the dry season there.
All right, and the lines aren't marked. I know that Cecil supposedly was tagged, but under his mane you wouldn't be able to see that. So it's not obvious if a lion leaves the park, so to speak. There's no way to tell that it's that lion.
No. There's no way to tell whether any lion comes in and out other than the fact that Cecil and several of the other lions there have been fitted with tags and were under observation by Wild Crew, which is the Oxford-based research group that was tracking Cecil. And that's actually how, not only how they knew he left the park, but that was how they knew that Jericho was alive. And I'll backtrack in a second.
Okay.
By being able to track and see that his collar was moving around the park well after he was reported to be killed.
Gotcha.
And if I can jump in for a second with the Cecil story, part of what made him such an iconic animal is he's a Hollywood story. Here was an older lion. He'd been run out of his territory by a younger rival. He was left on his own. His pride was taken away. And rather than just sulk about the edges of the territory, he teamed up with another older lion, Jericho, and the two of them came back in, and they kicked the young guy's butt, and they ran off the territory, and they took the girls back, and they fathered more cubs, and they were living in this fabulous environment where they had had the opportunity to do that, and that's what made him such an iconic figure. It was never say die, never quit, teamwork, don't give up to get something back. I mean, it was a fabulous story, and we heard the story before we ever saw the animal. So you knew this was a unique situation there in the animal world, and it's what made him such a tourist attraction.
And then man came in.
Yeah, a guy who
destroyed him.
thought that it was really cool to chop his head off and hang it on his wall.
What an idiot. Mark, if we can't stop these clowns from doing what they're doing, what about finding a way to convict them severe enough where it would kind of warn other people that probably this isn't a good thing to do? Is it the bureaucracy of high-paid lawyers getting these guys off, or is there a way to get these guys have a poster child? This is what's going to happen to you if you kill a lion or an animal in our property or in our country.
No, Laurie and I talked about this in an earlier call, and one of the issues that we face there is, and one of the reasons that we've taken the approach that we've taken as a community is there's only so much you can do to impact the Zimbabwe legal system. We're not going to suggest that, putting 100,000 calls into the embassy is a bad idea, but the reality of the economics in Zimbabwe are such that it's going to be very difficult to convince them that they should convict an American hunter when the economy at the higher end is so dependent on the American hunters coming there and paying $55,000 to hunt. So it's a really, really big obstacle. What we are working on doing is encouraging more and more people to go there. It is spectacular, notwithstanding the fact that the Mugabe government is one of the most corrupt in Africa. We felt safe the entire time. The facilities that we stayed in were maintained in a first-class manner. We felt that we saw an extraordinary amount of wildlife, and for us to think honestly that we're going to go in and impact how the Zimbabwe government decides to pursue an American hunter, we don't think is the best use of our time.
Let me ask you a question, because obviously you've been to Zimbabwe and we have not. How civilized is it? Could you compare it to anything in the United States as far as living conditions? What's it like?
No. It's Africa. It's a completely different world. However, you can experience it in 5-star comfort with king-size comfortable mattresses and hot and cold running water, or you can experience it on the ground in a tent surrounded by guide guards. It is a raw, natural habitat. When you're standing in the middle of a 30,000-acre preserve, aware of the fact that there are 8 people on that entire 30,000 acres, it's mind-blowing. Maybe you could do that if you parachuted into the middle of Kansas.
Right.
But there's nothing like it to compare to. However, the accommodations and the safety of the visitors was paramount. We had an exceptional experience there, just as exceptional as we did in Botswana and in South Africa.
Now, you said you're a professional photographer, videographer, so you travel all over the world. You get to see a lot of things.
We're not professionals, but I'm fortunate enough to have a wife who's in travel who manages to drag me around with her. So I have my passport with me and my hair combed at all times. So yeah, we've been very, very fortunate. But the experience of photographing in Africa is something that you can't compare it to anything. It was just the variety of wildlife, the proximity of them. If you've seen the Cecil video that Pamela shot, it was 15 feet away.
Right.
And of course, he could have stopped anywhere in his mile walk from where he was sitting to where Jericho was roaring, but he happened to stop right in front of the vehicle and then turned to the other side like he wanted to make sure we got his left profile.
It was a photo.
It's like Clark Gable.
He was like a diva. I mean, it was an amazing thing to watch. And again, it was part of his personality. We saw dozens and dozens of lions when we were in Africa, but nothing like this. And I think for better or for worse, and almost ironically, the sacrificial lamb for this whole movement was a lion.
It is, and we're gonna talk. I want to get more into some of that too. I want to go back for a moment, though. I know you collect donations and you also sell the Cecil the Lion T-shirts. Talk about that organization that the money goes to a little bit more in detail.
Well, 2 things. One of the things that's interesting is for whatever reason we've become a gathering point. For the Facebook page has become a place for people to mourn, to vent, to act, to post petitions. very early on, people started sending art tributes, and we thought, we ought to do something with these. So not only did we continue to post them and share them, but we actually reached out to some of the artists and asked if they would design T-shirts with us. And so on the cecilthelion.org website are 3 T-shirts that were actually designed by our community, and we have a second batch that we're about to release. And so instead of just making a donation, we gave people the opportunity to purchase a T-shirt and designated Wild Crew as the beneficiary of the donations that we raised, whether it was just somebody wanted to donate $10 to the cause or $20, or somebody wanted to buy T-shirts. So we decided early on to hook up with Brent Staplekamp, who is the guide who was on the ground physically tracking Cecil. We have regular communication with him. Our community members post questions that he answers. So we've developed a good relationship with a number of the groups on the ground there. We sent about a little under $10,000 to Wild Crew and just shifted our fundraising to Friends of Wangay, because now that the dry season is going on in the park, they need more resources to keep the pans filled with water. And so we're simply giving a large community of people a direction to take their anger, their need for action, and their donations. And so it's been really successful, and all we did was say, here's a way to do it.
Right, I think what you've done is really wonderful. I don't want you to go anywhere, Mark. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and we'll come back in just a moment, okay?
Thanks.
Our highly competitive and hectic world is fraught with dishonesty and challenges. Critical decisions must be made on a daily basis with accuracy when substantial assets are at risk. When you are confronted with a decision point involving opportunity and risk, consult with Sharpline Investigations, statewide experts in due diligence, investigations, and litigation support. Sharpline's professionals work with clients to conduct interviews, deep background investigations, and develop facts and intelligence related to litigation. When circumstances require confidential and expert fact-finding, turn to Sharpline Investigations, the statewide leaders in investigations and risk mitigation. Visit sharplineinvestigations.com or call 855-394-0042.
Hi, this is Laurie Zoock, radio host from the World of Laurie Zoock. I was so nervous about getting tattooed, but after doing my due diligence and checking out companies and artists, I had my tattoos done by Justin Dubois of Suncoast Tattoos. He is knowledgeable and artistic, and he gave me a beautiful tattoo, and he put me at ease before, during, and after the process. I just love my new tattoo. Go get your tattoo at Suncoast Tattoos. Call them at 727-575-7935 today. That's 727-575-7935. Or go to suncoasttattoos.net. Welcome back to the show. I've got Mark Robinson, who created the Cecil the Lion Facebook page. Mark, I want to talk more about the positive stuff. Well, you've been bringing up some of the positive stuff, and we've been talking about the Facebook page and how you're bringing people together. And the goal is really to make trophy hunting as socially unacceptable. You said as cigar smoking in a movie theater. I thought that was a great analogy. So how are you doing that? Is the Facebook page continuing to grow? And I see that you post updates because I read them all the time. So talk a little bit about maybe how do you get your updates?
I think there's a couple of things. I think what we really set out to do is create a gathering place for positive change. And I think that what we have attempted to do is be as informative as possible. And if that means posting opinions from hunters so that the membership and the community can understand what the other side is saying, and of course they're going to get 50,000 attack comments back.
Right.
We've encouraged that because we think the more we understand and the more we know, the better positioned we are to figure out where we can actually make and have a positive impact. We have very good contacts in Zimbabwe, and we have some expatriates from Zimbabwe who participate in the site who've given a lot of information about what the realities are in that country. And so notwithstanding the fact that we have this group who is, activists who want to immediately make change, we've had to help them understand that change is something that's going to take time. And so what we've looked at is where can we make changes now? So we raised $10,000. We put a couple hundred T-shirts out. We circulated, shared, signed dozens of petitions aimed at wildlife conservation and preservation. We actually helped force a face-to-face meeting with UPS to put our issue in front of them and make sure they understand that there's a global community out there that's simply not going to do business with them until they change their policy. We worked on contacting all of the airlines, bombarded the airlines, supporting them and applauding them when they changed their policy not to carry trophy kills, and pushing the others to follow suit. We've given the community all of their elected officials contact information and some ideas for letter writing to make sure that they can get them backing the Cecil Act. We put pressure on other businesses. Pamela has been phenomenal in working with the global media. She's gotten the Cecil the Lion video on virtually every single news organization in the world. She spent probably half a day, three half days working with ABC News on the 2020 program that they broadcast. So we also got the cover page and a 12-page double spread article in Lagoa magazine, which is a very high-end travel magazine. We got the cover with Cecil's picture on it and a feature article which they invited us to write. So we've done it in a couple of months. We've done an extraordinary amount of work and had an extraordinarily positive impact on the changes that are taking place.
Right, and you're doing this all as a volunteer because you love Cecil.
I have a real job. So this is, this is what Pamela and I do from, call it 8 p.m. to 11:30 p.m. every day. And we also have a gal, Paula, who's been working with us, and while we were just on vacation, took over making sure that the posts were maintained and that relevant information was being put out there.
Gotcha. Now, you mentioned a few minutes ago that hunters have actually posted their opinions on the Cecil the Lion page.
Well, we get trolls, which are the people who go, "You're all idiots. You should be more concerned with this issue, with that issue." And we just try and clean that up because we're not a free speech site. But we did feel that there were a couple of people who came on who made very passionate arguments for their thinking about hunters playing a role in conservation, et cetera. And so we didn't just automatically throw them off or delete them. We thought, let's give these people an opportunity in this forum to put their thoughts out there. Now, 90% of that has been combated with factual evidence that shows that hunting doesn't equal conservation, that the reason that the Safari Club International bought a couple of vehicles for Wangay Park rangers to stop poaching is because they don't want the poachers to take the best animals. They want the hunters to take the best animals. So it's not as if they're saving the best animals. They're saving the best animals for them.
Right, and to clarify, there's a difference between hunting for food and trophy hunting.
We, the administrators, have not taken a pure anti-hunting position. We understand that hunting is part of human society. We understand that in many communities it's how people get food. We're not going to dive into that whole program. We're going to go back to your earlier statement, which is our sort of goal. Make trophy hunting socially repugnant. In the same way that we did cigar smoking in movie theaters and elevators, just make it so socially unacceptable that it goes by the wayside. That's going to take time. We don't have a ton of time when it comes to lions, which is why we're working harder and keeping our focus there and not trying to change the Zimbabwe legal system. We're trying to figure out how could we negatively impact the trophy hunting business.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I want to discuss, why do you think trophy hunters think that it's okay? And, they're proud when they post their photos up on Facebook with their kill. I go into these are sociopaths and psychopaths. We're not talking about, the hunting for food. We're talking about for the thrill of the kill. And I sit here and go, what kind of human being thinks that it's acceptable to do that? And I know Jeff's going to jump in because I know what he's going to say. So go for it, Jeff. What do you think?
Right away. I believe that there's something lacking. There's something missing in their life, something that either happened or caused them to feel that they need to kill, the need for blood, the need for the lust of the thrill of that chase and taking a life. And I don't understand. I mean, this guy could have just as easily hunted down this lion and took a really good picture or a good video and came back and said, you know, I could have killed it, but this is what I did. I preserved it, and I'm showing you the magnificence of what is on this earth. And what it does is it makes you feel so insignificant in the scheme of things, exactly how small we really are. Like when you say, Mark, when you stand in a 30,000 acre preserve and there's only 8 of you, you just realize how little you are and how insignificant you are in the scheme of things to the animals around. You're just part of what it is. Now, what brings these people to that, I don't know. And I don't think anybody can say this is the action for this action. I don't believe that we'll ever know why this guy Dr. Palmer decided to kill with an arrow, which is unacceptable in the hunting world anyway. I'm surprised that most hunters didn't say, look, this is not the way. If you're going to do it, you do it with a high-powered rifle. You knock it down, and you knock it down fast. This guy did it to see this animal suffer, and that, to me, is unacceptable.
Well, I think if you look at, when you look at hunting and you go, okay, so you got a maniac like Ted Nugent.
Yeah, true.
Who grinds up the hooves and smokes them just to say that, he's a conservationist. Let's look at what Palmer did. Because what he did basically is he didn't go out on foot and track an animal for the thrill of the hunt. He actually had to pay the guide to bait it, drag it out of the safety of the park onto private land where he bribed a landowner who didn't have a permit to shoot the lion to allow him to shoot it. He waited until Cecil came because another lion was feeding on the carcass that they baited him with. He blinded him with a floodlight, shot him with an arrow. He was a lousy shot, obviously. Made him suffer for 40 hours, cut his head off, cut his skin off, and left the body to rot. So help me understand any aspect of this that says conservation. I spent 2 afternoons with Cecil. I shot him 100 times, but I left him for the next person to shoot.
Exactly.
Because our whole attitude is shoot photos, not lions. I got 100 pictures of that lion in 2 days and left him for the thousands of tourists behind me who were going to come in through the rest of the year and take their own pictures of him.
Which you would have gotten, with those pictures, you get a lot more wows than you get, oh my God, because nothing upsets people more than to see an animal, at least people that I would be with, to see an animal butchered for the thrill of the kill and then chopping its head off. What makes you a man to do that instead of saying, man, look at the video I got, look at the pictures, look, these will be posters and these will be...
You said it, though, he's not a man.
No,
he's
there's
not a
something
man
wrong.
for doing that. There's something wrong. And Mark, what I see is that there's a lot of people that think that what he did was acceptable. And I sit here and go, maybe that's why the world is the way it is. And when it comes to the world of rescue or conservation and lions, there are going to be 2 different sides. Mm-hmm. But to me, they're very clear cut. There's the good side with the people like you who want to photograph it and, preserve the lion. And then you've got the bad side with the ones that want to just go out and kill. And yet they don't have any conscience to doing it.
And they don't realize that they're pushing everything to extinction. Eventually there will be no lions. There will be no rhinoceros. There will be no elephants. Then what do we do?
Well, they're not true hunters. He wasn't a true hunter, though. Like you said, he did it slowly.
It was to see it be... to suffer.
Right. But if you had put him with the lion in a contained area with no weapons, what would have happened? Right. Exactly.
We sat on a flight back from Johannesburg, and I popped open the laptop, opened up Lightroom, and immediately went to the Cecil pictures. Now, I probably took 8,000 pictures while we were in Africa. We went great white shark diving. We did 2 safaris in 2 camps in Botswana, 1 in Zimbabwe, 1 in South Africa. Had thousands and thousands of pictures. The first thing I went to was the Cecil pictures. I wanted to see those, and I wanted to develop those in Lightroom. While I was sitting in my seat, there were 2 idiots in front of me comparing their pictures of the 2 dead lions in the back of trucks that they had shot.
Oh, my God.
I almost threw up because I was looking at it going, this was an old lion. These guys were saying, well, he was old, we killed him. No, he was old, and he went off and he hooked up with another old guy, and they came back and they stole back the pride, and they were still fathering cubs. They were propagating the species. All you did was wipe it out, and taking the big male lions means you're wiping out the big male lions. The comparison we make is look at elephants. Go into National Geographic 30 years ago and look at the size of the tusks that elephants had then, and look at them now. They're smaller because the big tusked elephants are being wiped out. The gene pool is being eradicated off the face of the earth. And this is by so-called conservationists. Well, the so-called conservationists have dropped the rhino numbers down to 20,000 and the lion numbers down to 20,000 from 450,000 in the 60s.
Right.
How is this conservation? Well, the obvious answer is it isn't. So back to the original question, how can these people think that they have a twisted mind? They've convinced themselves that they're doing something that's good environmentally when every shred of evidence says they are busy wiping species off the face of the earth.
Well,
and so we need to decide very quickly, is that okay or not? And what we say is, socially, it needs to be made repugnant.
Right. I was going to say, and how do you have your site, you have these methods, but how do you take people that think that way and try to convince them otherwise?
Well, some of those people you're not going to convince, and so you have to go to the legislators and have them legislate their ability to think that way out of existence. And so when you ban the import of threatened and endangered trophy kills, you make it more difficult for them to bring them into the country. And as nice as it is that the airlines did this, the Safari Club International has no shortage of members who have private jets that they can put their trophy kills on and fly home. There are plenty of sea-bearing companies that will ship by sea. So we're attacking where we can make an impact, which is going after the legality of the shipment of trophy hunting in the U.S. And so every single member of this community has shared and signed and gone to their elected officials and said, we have to pass the Cecil Act. We've gone to U.S. Fish and Wildlife with petitions, with letters saying you have to close the loophole and list lions as threatened. Because to not do that means we're going to sit there and there's going to be 4 left on the planet, and we'll go, oh golly, what should we have done? We're not willing to wait for that.
Right, and that. Go ahead, Jeff has a question.
I was just going to say, and it all sounds good, but do the lions have enough time? There's not enough of them, or like you say, the rhinoceroses, the elephants, or the gene pool has been diluted, and if we wait too much longer, we're not going. These animals will only be seen in circuses or in parks, places like Busch Gardens, and at that point, the species is done because it's not in the wild anymore. Isn't there something more critical that we can do, more dramatic, to stop these people? Because like you say, they've got their private jets, and these people have a hell of a lot more money than any of us. They can fly in and out undetected. Can't they put a bounty out for these type of hunters and say, okay, granted, the hunter is paying $50,000 to the landowner. We've got $100,000 if you take the hunter and give them to us, and maybe deter them from that. I don't know what else, but you hit people in the pocket, and that seems to be the only way to get people to stop.
Well, I think two comments to that. One is, and it's probably the thing that I get more pushback on as administrator of the page than anything. Palmer handed us the greatest gift he could have handed this movement. And it's often said, and we heard this saying when we were in Africa, male lions will often sacrifice themselves for the good of the pride. We truly believe, only because we sit here and go, how did he suck us into all of this? Here we were, 2 photo tourists who like travel, and the next thing you know, we're spending our nights with 32,000 people on a Facebook page. It was a gift that this movement was given because it solidified everybody. My answer is we are going to make those changes. We are going to hit them in the pocketbook. We are going to make it tougher for them to get their kills home. We are going to get more and more people to explore Zimbabwe outside Victoria Falls and get out into these parks and bring photo tourism. We are promoting every day, go to Zimbabwe, because we do have members who can afford to do that. Pamela has been working with a group in Zimbabwe to put together a symposium on the entire issue of trophy hunting and hunting economics in Zimbabwe for July 1st of next year, which will be the anniversary of Cecil's death, we are working with groups in Zimbabwe. She's using all of her experience as a travel planner to put this together, and we're going to bring as many people as we can with us and make it as affordable as possible to get people out there to see these animals and to even better understand how critical it is that we get these changes made now. And if we can get some senators or some congresspersons to come with us because they love to be photographed doing something useful
right
over there, and they love boondoggles, if we can get people to come with us, if we can get exposure from the media, if we can bring some of the media contacts that we've had to cover this thing, I want to include a hunter. I want to include their perspective. I want people to understand the whole picture because we don't have time, Jeff. That's the answer. We don't have time. My grandchildren will not be able to see lions in the wild if we don't do something now. And Palmer handed us the perfect gift, which was Cecil.
Right. One of the things I admire and work about what you're doing is that, in essence, you are keeping Cecil's memory alive. You're not letting it die because the incident has passed, and there was everybody went crazy for a few weeks, and then it tends to slow down, and people forget the bad things. And I think what you're doing is you're actually keeping the memory alive, and you're initiating change, as you said, the sacrificial lamb. You're making things change. So I want to know, how has this experience changed you?
Pamela and I, went to Africa as photo tourists, and we came back as conservationists. There's simply no way that you can see the animals there and not have it impact you. How this has changed me is it's given me an absolute awe and appreciation for the people who've been out fighting this fight long before I ever got involved in it. It's given me an incredible sense of appreciation for how much energy and dedication they have. It's made me incredibly proud for Pamela and I that we simply became a conduit. When you said earlier something that, addressing to me that I've done or that Pamela and I have done, we haven't done anything. We created a Facebook page and a website and have given people a place to channel their energy. It's their energy. I call it Cecil's Brigade. If there's a directive that needs to be given where they can impact change, we send them in that direction and they respond. All we're doing is saying, here are opportunities to make a difference, and we're watching them make a difference. And we couldn't be more proud to be a part of that.
All right, very good. I want to ask you another question before we go to break real quick. I've seen a lot of petitions circulating. People create, on change.org, they'll go and create a petition. Do you know if anything actually happens as a result of those petitions, or are you involved in any of the petitions?
We don't discourage people from posting them, but for better or for worse, we do try and explain to them what the impact is. The White House has to respond if a petition receives more than 250,000 signatures, which was easy. 250,000 signatures to extradite Dr. Palmer. We probably had those in 2 weeks. They're required to respond. They're not required to act. And so I think a lot of people feel let down that we've signed all these petitions. What's happening? We're not discouraging people from doing that because there's some energy in it and people feel like they want to be involved. We're simply not the ones promoting them. We did promote the UPS, and we did promote the petitions to the airlines because we knew that that's talking to a consumer-based group who you can hit in the pocketbook. And as Jeff said earlier, if you can hit people in their pocketbook, you can make them change. Look at what the airlines did. They were afraid of alienating a huge consumer base, and so they changed their policies. We're not content to go, congratulations. We keep contacting them to make sure that they stay on that. When Safari Club International told all of their members to write letters to the airlines saying that they wouldn't do business with them if they didn't reverse their policy, we started an entire new letter-writing campaign commending them for doing it. So these are things that are very easy to get people to do that actually make change. Petitioning the Zimbabwe government is something we're certainly happy to let people post the petition, but it's not something that we're putting energy into because we don't see that as a realistic way to affect change.
Right. All right, Mark, stay with us. We got one more segment to go, and I want to talk a little bit more about the Cecil Act in the next segment, so stay with us.
Do you suffer from back, neck, or body pain? Do you suffer from migraines or have jaw or face pain? Has conventional medicine failed you? Were you injured or in an accident? Call Call chiropractic physician Dr. Dan Maddock at 813-935-1664. Dr. Dan has helped thousands of patients gain relief for more than 30 years. Dr. Dan is caring, gentle, and takes his time with each patient. He's also a past president of the International Craniopathic Society, a special certification of only 300 chiropractors worldwide. Dr. Dan helps patients from the neck up and the neck down. Dr. Dan accepts most insurance plans. Don't continue to live in pain. Call 813-935-1664 today. That's 813-935-1664 and get on track to better health.
Are you looking for an affordable way to advertise to thousands of consumers nationally? If you own a business and didn't think you could afford radio advertising, you need to call me, Laurie Zoock, host of the nationally syndicated radio show, The World of Laurie Zoock. My show reaches thousands of people on 29 AM and FM stations nationwide, as well as through the internet. Additionally, your commercials will also be heard on my podcasts and throughout social media sites. Don't wait another minute. Call me at 813-777-4908. 813-777-4908, and let me bring your message to the nation and help you gain more exposure. Welcome back to the show. I've got Mark Robinson, who is the administrator for the Cecil the Lion Facebook page. Now, Mark, we've only got a couple of minutes left, so can you just quickly give me a summary of what the Cecil Act is?
Yeah, it's basically closing loopholes in the U.S. Fish and Wildlife policies that would allow the African lion to be listed as threatened, which would then give them additional protection regarding laws in the U.S. Applying to trophy hunting. And this would basically curb trophy hunting of endangered and threatened species and would extend restrictions on the import and export of animals that are being considered for inclusion under the Endangered Species Act. So this is two things. If you couple it with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife listing the African lion as threatened and then cut the ability to import or export those, it really shuts down the ability for hunters to bring those trophies into the U.S., regardless of whether they can get them in by private plane or seaborne shipments, etc. And so that's really where the focus is right now, is on making sure that that act gets passed.
Okay, and is there a timeline for that act?
Right now, my understanding is that they are going to be putting that up first week of October. And so we're just encouraging everybody to go contact their elected representatives. And doing it by letter is a better idea. You can go on senate.org or house.org and just enter your zip code. It will tell you who your elected official is and how to get a hold of them.
Gotcha. Now, in a few months, I'd like to do a follow-up segment, on another show to find out what's going on. So I hope we can keep in touch. What is your contact information in the event the listener wants to contact you? How can they get a hold of you?
www.cecilthelion.org is the best way to reach us, or Pamela at cecilthelion.org, and we will reply to every message. We might not do it tonight, but we'll get to it in the next few days because we're happy to have a lot of them. And I think that you will be joining a community that firmly believes with absolute conviction that we're going to bring about change, no matter how big the obstacles or how many people tell us it'll never happen. Trophy hunting will not be socially acceptable, and we're going to play a big role in that.
Right. Well, I'm going to have you on in a few months as a follow-up. So I want to thank you very much for joining me, Mark Robinson, Cecil the Lion's Facebook page. And we'll be back next week on The World of Laurie Zoock. Join me then.
Thank you, Laurie.
Thank you, Mark.